Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 8, Episode 14 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on, I can't remember the month, September 29th, 2025. We've got our last of the summer beers here, the ones that I bought for like our kind of summery episodes. And today we're doing Victory Brewing's Key Lime Lager, or Vienna style lager. It's 5.5% ABV. It says, this tangy key lime Vienna style lager is bursting with notes of fresh, zingy lime and finishes slightly sweet thanks to the crisp German malt. You're in for a thirst-quenching summer sipper that lets you sit back, relax, and let the good times roll. See what Ricky thinks. He's had a sip already.
Yeah, I had a couple of sips. I think as a beer, it's good. I think specifically as a key lime beer, it falls a little flat. The lime, the citrus is there. It's nowhere near limey enough or sour enough for me to say, like, this is a lime beer.
Yeah.
This is just a good lager who is letting you know the tanginess is not from the hops. It's from some lime.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of a Radler a little bit.
A little bit. Like
a Sprite was infused with this more alcoholic beer or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think it's quite sweet enough to feel like that. But maybe if it was like some club soda with just like the smallest amount of sweetener, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
There is something that makes it a little light and like effervescent and stuff like that.
Well, but there's a flavor that you get from Radlers when it's mixed with like Sprite or something, or like lemonade, that makes it. It's just this flavor that it reminds me of, is what I'm saying. It's not, it is not like a Radler.
Yeah,
it has like that kind of flavor.
The citrus is there, but I would also, if the back of that can, like I didn't know it was lime, the back of that can said something about like, and citrus forward hops, I'd have been like, that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
For something that is such a pronounced and well-known flavor as like a key lime, I think that falls flat. Because like, it could have been other types of lime. I'd have been like, I don't know. All limes are different. Maybe I don't know if I've had a Meyer lime, if Meyer lime is even a thing. So like I could have seen it, but like it doesn't taste like key lime. If you're gonna tell me it's a key lime, I'm gonna think it's gonna taste something like every other dish people put key lime into.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like it doesn't have that meringue creaminess that key lime pie generally has. And it doesn't have like that almost like puckeringly sourness that key lime pie has. Like it's none of those things.
Yeah, even outside of the pie, you're right. It's just not acidic enough. Like it's not citrusy enough.
Right.
And it doesn't. You're right. It's the pucker that you're missing. Yeah. It's because key limes are fairly sour. So I mean, again, not bad. Back to what I first said. It's a good beer. I just think if you're gonna pick up this beer because you're like, oh, I love lime, This isn't going to do it for you. But it is a refreshing beer. I mean, I'm going to finish what I have. It's light. It is a little citrusy. It's a good sipping beer. It makes it really good for this podcast because my throat gets a little sore, dry. It'll refresh me right up. But I think they missed the mark on the flavor they're advertising.
Yeah, completely agree. They missed the mark on the flavor they're advertising. This should have been called like, soda beer or something like that. Like, Sprite the beer or something, just putting that out there. Mm-hmm. But the key lime thing, not good. Vienna Vacay, not good. As far as like, shouldn't say not good. Not hitting the mark. The beer itself is fine. It is the best of the Victory Brewing beers that I've ever had. It's still, there is something about the way they brew their beers that has this aftertaste. It is very pronounced in the Christmas Monkey. Mm-hmm. It's not very pronounced here. It's still there. I'll finish this beer. It is not the Hopimus Maximus, reaction I had. But it is not my favorite beer. If I went to the store and was like, I'm going to pick this up, or if I saw it and I had the choice between this and a Bud Light, I'd choose the Bud Light.
Okay.
Yeah. Which neither of them are my favorite beers. Just would rather have a Bud Light than this. I don't like that particular aftertaste I get on this. It's not so bad in this that I won't finish drinking it. But if you're sensitive to the Christmas Monkey aftertaste, probably wouldn't want to drink this one.
Gotcha. I think that's a fair take.
Yeah, but I mean, if you like Radler style beers, or you like very like not as hoppy, very lime forward lagers, like if you like to put a lemon in your Corona or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or in your Modelo or something. This isn't a bad beer for that sort of thing. I'll be interested to see what it does when it warms up a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's talk about our recipes, and I'm gonna let you. I put the prompt in and everything, but I'm gonna let you start out because the the recipe that ChatGPT came up with for you is pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So I have to start with, I believe brewing is an artistic process. And so to expect the AI to do it well, we got to put a little of our own art in there. So I spent the first couple prompts training this AI to act like Joe. His career, his aspirations, the things he loves to do, things he's made in the past that he's really enjoyed. And then I proposed the question of that's what this episode was about with this S'mores Mead, which led to several wonderful paragraphs of essentially running this podcast. It had an intro, it had some pitches in there, it had a little twist. Unfortunately, a lot of that original text did not get saved, but we have recreated the recipe by basically just asking you to do the recipe again. Didn't nail the host quite as well the second time. But I'll say, came up with a pretty good idea, at least I think, in terms of creativity. What it suggested is to take about half the honey and bochet it.
Mm-hmm.
Get some of those more caramely, more smoky notes in there. And then a more traditional, hey, add in some vanilla, add in some cocoa nibs, put in some graham cracker, which at first I was like, that doesn't sound right. But looked it up. People do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just actual raw graham cracker crush is really put it in a good bag so it doesn't like cloudy up your beer. And, then the same thing with some actual marshmallows, even suggested maybe toasting them. Overall, just looking at the recipe, nothing glaringly wrong with it. I think it's definitely a recipe we can go forward and make and see how it'll do. Now, what's interesting is, as you guys caught, my first chat did not really save because I forgot to log in as myself and just did it as a guest, and it was stuck to the cookies on my phone, which I guess cleared between when I did it and now. So when I went and asked it again multiple times, it did shoot out some recipes that, quite frankly, I think were real bad ideas. So I'll put a little asterisk here that I did a really good job for me when I really got it deep into the prompt. When my first thing was, I was like, hey, you're running a podcast and this episode is about S'mores Mead and you've perfected that recipe. What's the recipe you made? It did way worse than when I was more like, easing it into stuff. So, with enough reprompting and saying, no, actually, I want a bochet and I want about half the honey to be this, and I want you to use actual marshmallow. Like when I got down and basically told it what the other prompt did, it recreated it pretty faithfully. But, mileage may vary, coax your AI into being the artist you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, and I've read a lot of these things that are in this separately on other like recipe websites and stuff like that for meads. So I'm not surprised that it came up with this. The thing that I'm the most impressed with out of all of the prompts that we went through, and we haven't talked about mine yet, are that versus the first time that I did something like this, it's picking an appropriate yeast. It is giving us the amount of honey pounds per gallon that you would need to be able to reach the ABV that you're targeting. It's giving you actual good ingredients. Now, it doesn't tell you where to or how good of a quality of ingredient you need to get, but it is giving you the right ingredients to reach what you're trying to do, especially if you're doing it more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Natural way. Like you're not adding flavorings, you're not adding, other things that would be more like store-bought stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I'll even bring up a point on that. I think it did do a very good job with general ingredient selection, though I do think it struggles with things that are maybe can have multiple meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So marshmallow is something it nailed perfectly the first time, but then messed up the next two times. The one we're probably going to post with the episode is like the third revision of me making it do what it did the first time. And the first two times it kind of messed up. It didn't want us to use marshmallows. It wanted us to use a lot of marshmallow root.
Right.
And so, that probably would not have gone well. Because if you think about what people eat as marshmallows today, it's essentially whipped sugar with some vanilla in it.
Right.
It doesn't act. It's not actually a marshmallow in the historical sense. So that would have been an interesting brew where it's like, all right, I got my cocoa nibs. I've toasted some of this honey, and here's just a bunch of vegetation. I need so much vegetation in this bag. It probably would have gone that great, especially because it was also still making you add vanilla and other stuff like that.
Right.
So still very impressed, but something to think about maybe if you're prompting for your own stuff is if you're wanting to make something like, let's say you wanted to do, I forget what they're called, like the pepper meads, a casamel.
Yeah.
You might need to prompt it a little bit on like what type of peppers you're thinking about, because it might just come in there and say, hey, 10 black peppercorns.
Right.
It's got pepper in there,
Yeah.
and that's not quite what you're looking for.
Exactly. Because peppercorns, well, they do have capsicum. It's a much smaller amount per peppercorn than it would be per, um, an equivalent amount of Thai chili or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
And you won't get that vegetable nature from it and stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Okay, so I did both of them because sometimes, things happen and I wanted to make sure that we had both recipes.
Yeah.
Plus, I just was like on a roll when I was sitting there. I was like, okay, I have this prompt. This prompt is just, what I would ask just to get it to spit something out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went with what it spit out first. I asked for a couple of additions and I put all that in the chat. I've got the chat history here. But basically my prompt was help me make a gallon recipe for a blank style mead that is about 10% ABV. I wanted to have a certain type of mouthfeel, certain type of flavors, include a TOSNA 3.0 schedule for nutrients, and back sweetening to make it off dry when moved to secondary. So like I gave it a set of parameters, and basically it's like, all right, so for a 2-gallon batch, you need roughly 3 pounds to get it about to 3 pounds per gallon, so about 6 pounds total of honey to get it about to that 10% ABV, which we'll overshoot it a little bit, but it's close. It's more than 10%, so it knew about what it needed to do, about how much water we needed, gave me several different options in Gemini for yeast. So Lalvin EC118, 1118, or 71B. And it says, these are two good high ABV yeasts, and, the differences between the two, and it's accurate. 71B gives softer, fruitier profile, and since I had asked for something to be hearty mouthfeel with pumpkin spice flavors as well as pumpkin pie base flavor, it knew there was going to be some fruity pumpkin summer squash type flavors in there, so it did that. And it really was kind of leaning more towards 71B, which would be a good yeast for this. And then, pumpkin puree, put in some pumpkin spice, and then put in some extra cinnamon sticks. All that stuff, pretty decent. The recipe it spit out, I don't know how you felt about it, but it gave the right TOSNA schedule.
Yeah,
it gave all that stuff.
I think where I'm judging all of these recipes is there anything glaringly wrong? And there isn't. All the recipes we got, I think, will, from a technical end, work. And then I think the real test is we make them and we see how they actually taste.
Yeah. Now, the difference between Gemini and ChatGPT is that while they kind of went for the same thing, ChatGPT broke up the nutmeg, ginger, and allspice in the pumpkin spices into different things.
Okay, instead of just saying pumpkin spice.
Yeah, instead of doing that. Is like, hey, put this ground stuff in here, do this, do that. It only picked 71B. So it was like, here, do Lalvin 71B. that's the right yeast for this. EC1118 would also be good. It'll strip out a little bit of the flavor, but it's not going to be too bad. And the process by which it told us to do things was a little bit different because it kind of like truncated the primary fermentation into two parts. So it says to put the pumpkin solids, which it told me to use puree. There's not going to be any solids, you know. So I found that to be a little weird. So it got that wrong. But you know, it did say if anything floats to the top to punch it down if you need to with like a spoon or something like that. And then rack off the solids if there's any. Add your spices in secondary, which would be, you know, able to overcome that. It doesn't taste like pumpkin mead, you know, sort of deal. And I feel like it did a good job. Then I asked it, say, hey, okay, make this a 3-gallon one and give me all the same stuff, you know. So 9.5 to 10 pounds of honey, and then instead of 1.5, about 3.5 to 5 pounds of pumpkin puree for this. So
yeah, I saw that. I'll say that was maybe my only reservation. I think it was good enough to say it didn't mess up, but that's a range.
That is a range. That,
you know,
and
that's
that
like
was
20%.
Exactly what I was about to say. Like it should have been more specific there. So like it did a good job of like bumping it up. It didn't do a good job of being more specific.
Yeah, because, you know, I'd say if it had said 3.5 to 4, I'd give it that, because like you're gonna find the cans of pumpkin puree you find, right? Like if you're finding all exactly 1 pound ones, go up to 4. If you can get like half-pound ones, go like 3.5. You know, but like 3.5 to 5, that's a jump. You know, that's an extra 1.5 in there, which is what of your 3. That's like 40-ish something.
Yep.
You know, that's a lot. You know, it's an extra. Once you add it, do an extra math, like an extra 30%. You know, that's not trivial in terms of final flavor. So, you know, you're gonna. I think it's fine for, again, like people like us. We're gonna make them and we're gonna test them. We're gonna see if they're good. I don't think that's great for a beginner. You know.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that any of the 3-gallon recipes that it gave me would be good for.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say one observation, because in my original training of who you were, I mentioned that, you know, you prefer 1-gallon batches. So it had been spitting out 1 gallons to me. When I had to redo it, I didn't tell it that. It made a 5-gallon to start, and I kind of ran into the same issue there. Everything was technically correct, but it was not specific enough, I think, for a new person to really nail it. Because I could see if you bounced on those extremes, if you averaged everything out and did the middle, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
But if you were like, oh, okay, I'll do 3.5 of this, and then I'll do, you know, an equivalent different ingredient at the max of there, at that, whatever it would have been 5, that could start to unbalance a drink.
Completely agree. I also think that so what we're talking about is ChatGPT's scaling response.
Yeah.
I think that Gemini did a much better job of the scale to 3 gallons, because it was very specific. 9 pounds of honey, 3 gallons of water, 1 packet of yeast, 43.5 ounces, approximately 1.3 kilograms, can of pumpkin puree.
Yeah, I'll say,
was like boom, 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 do this. Now, whether or not that's good, different story, but it did like make it appropriate.
Yeah, it did give you a very tight recipe. I'll say I kind of noticed that too with ChatGPT, and part of that, when I was just doing my own before I read yours, I was like, maybe, you know, some of this is, I've told it to be a podcast host and make an entertaining episode. But you're right, ChatGPT was not quite as, I don't want to say necessarily precise, but maybe like concise. Like it wasn't making a firm decision for you. It was giving you a little bit of a range, a little bit of like what do we want to do with stuff. In the recipe I have, I kind of had to prompt it to get kind of pretty specific. I told it, like, I want this much of it to be the Vacay, because it was recreating what the first one did.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the problem I saw also with the s'mores mead recipe that I did, that I came up with. Gemini did a better job overall of coming up with what you're supposed to do, how to get the smoky flavor. It does a tincture for the graham crackers, so you don't have that extra stuff floating around in the thing. It turns it into a slurry.
Yep.
And it also gave you options. It said you could use crushed biscuit malt or Vienna malt, so you could get like
Okay.
one of those sorts of things instead of doing the graham crackers. Taught you how to make a simple syrup for this stuff. When gave you days for your Tasna schedule, and I felt like it really ramped up the 3 gallon again very accurately. Whether or not that is going to be good,
Yeah.
don't know. But I feel like Gemini did a better, more accurate job, where ChatGPT probably just gave information that it could consume within like a recipe, expecting for you, like from like a website or something,
Yeah.
expecting for you to know enough about this to know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think that that's the thing of it. I think it does a good job of summarizing what it probably looked through and saw lots of different recipes to make something like this, and hitting that like, well, 80% of them are within this range and stuff like that. But I liked it. It's certainly way better than I thought it was going to be. But I think you're right in terms of, without tasting them and seeing which ones actually made better recipes, I would give Gemini the edge in the terms of, at the end of the day, here's a recipe card, go do it.
Right. So we've got 5 recipes here, or we've got 3 recipe. No, so yeah, 3 different recipes here. Essentially, that. No, I was right the first time. We've got 5 recipes because I did mine twice. We've got 5 recipes here. Do we want to do each one, or do we just want to pick the one that we think would be the best?
I think we pick the one we think will be the best for each one,
Okay.
and try them in like a 1 gallon version.
Okay. I kind of want to do all 5 of them, and I mean we'll just start with doing 2, but the reason that I kind of want to do all 5 of them is because I would like to see what the difference is between a ChatGPT done one and a.
Oh, I see what you say. Yeah. You want to essentially then maybe do closer to 4, where you want to do the s'more from ChatGPT, do the s'more from Gemini, do a pumpkin from ChatGPT, do a pumpkin from Gemini.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine. What I want to see is the head-to-head of like, this is what we think your best showing was a ChatGPT, and Gemini, this is what we thought your best showing was. Let's put you head-to-head. And we can definitely do that with like meads. Say take the pumpkin and and then the s'mores and the s'mores.
Yeah, I also like, I want to. They're all 4 different recipes, and they're close, but they're just different enough that they're going to all 4 taste different.
Yeah.
So like, I want to see what comes out of the 4, especially if you make them at the same time with basically the same like type of ingredients, so they're consistent as much as possible.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, especially with the s'mores one, that curve into the bochet was a choice.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a choice I'm about. I don't know if it's going to be good. I think in all honesty, it makes it a lot harder for it to be good.
Right.
Because the bochet is a very powerful, very complex flavor profile. But in all honesty, I like that it went there.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know that I would do that for s'mores. Like, if anything, if I wanted some smoke, I'd just add some liquid smoke.
Yeah, I think and it wasn't quite as verbose in this one, but it talked a lot about like the more caramely notes that you get out of that, which I can see of kind of like everything being toasted up.
Yeah.
And so like maybe, but I've only had the 2 bocets that you've made, and I've commented both times. They're kind of like what a bochet to me tastes like. If you didn't know how it was actually made, you would think Scotch is made.
Yeah.
Because if you just concentrate Scotch, that's kind of what, I mean, if you concentrate a bochet, that's what Scotch kind of tastes like.
Yeah.
So like that's a strong flavor. That's not a s'more.
No.
But I can see that is a sweet, smoky, complex thing that if you then like fill it up with like about a third to a half of the honey that's not processed like that, where you're putting in vanilla on top of it to pull out some other notes, I could see like maybe that is something. I'll be honest, I don't expect it to be. But if you came to me and you said, hey, here's my recipe for a s'mores mead, and it was just kind of like a regular mead, kind of like what we made the first time, I'd look at me like, okay, yeah, that could be good. You know, we kind of did something very similar to that before. It didn't really work out, but that could be good. I think the process there is fine. You brought me 2 minutes of Bochet, and we were like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited, even though I acknowledge it might not be any better. Is at least like that's a turn.
Right.
That was a stylistic choice you just made right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think knowing that these things are not creative,
Mm-hmm.
it had to be directed by one of us. Like somehow we leaked some of that like idea into whatever we were prompting, or we
I can
did, or it
definitely
pulled from like some
yes.
thing where somebody is like doing something like that, and it just like kind of did it.
I can definitely see the line of connection in here because I say a s'more and I'm thinking like literally just the ingredients popped in a microwave, like that's a s'more.
Mm-hmm.
It took that step of like, okay, where do you have s'mores camping? And then I'm sure someone has like, what do you cook it over? You cook it over fire, that's smoky. When people want to put smoky and like caramely and fiery stuff into a mead, they bochet it. You know, like I can see it making those leaps, not really knowing any better. I certainly didn't expect it to give me one. When I put it in, I literally sat there for a minute. I was like, do I redo that? I don't think I redo that. I think I want to actually make that mead, even if it's not really a s'more, even if it's just a vanilla-y, chocolatey, Grammy scotch.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, I mean, but all that stuff fits into a scotch because you get all the baking spices.
Exactly. Like, I don't.
All the vanilla and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hard candy.
I'm not
the only
sure.
thing it's missing.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. I don't think it'll taste like a s'more necessarily, but I do think it's got a chance to be really good.
Yeah.
Like, it could be very tasty. It just wouldn't really be a s'more. It'll just be its own little thing.
All right. So we're gonna do. We're gonna. Or did we decide we're gonna do all 5 of them? Or are we gonna do?
I think we're bouncing between 4 and 5. If we're already making 4, I don't see the problem in making 5.
Yeah, just make every single one of the recipes it came up with, and then, like just document the process really well. See what happens. Go through the TASNA schedule, and we can do it all here. Like maybe it'll be our over the winter brews, because I like even if we put them together tomorrow, they're not going to be ready until
they're not,
next season. So
over the break.
Yeah, do them. Just start putting them together sometime this fall, and have them brew over the winter. I'll take care of them. We'll bottle them one day, and then be good to go.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about Google Ads. Well, do you have anything else you want to say about the recipes?
No, apart from, I think you're right, compared to many years ago when we were testing AI out, there's some significant improvements in mead making.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that long ago. It wasn't even many years ago. It was like 9 months.
That's true. You've done it more recently. The last time I tried to do something like that was when I was in my cooking adventures, and that was, I think, two years ago.
Yeah, it was like a year and a half ago. 2 years
Well, no, because it was for Thanksgiving, so it was pretty
2
close
years
to
ago.
now.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Then. Yeah. All right, so Google Ads AI Translated Lip Sync to videos. Did you see how this is working?
Yeah. I'm sort of conflicted, but not really. What I couldn't see in the article, maybe it was there and I didn't see it because I was reading them pretty late at night. You can opt into and out of this program, right? Like your videos don't have to be auto dubbed.
No.
Yeah, then in all honesty, while it's a little jank, I saw some examples of it. Go for it. It's the same thing with the auto dub. It's kind of just like letting other people be able to maybe view your videos and enjoy them.
Yeah.
And so I don't see the harm in that.
Well, not only that, I just think this is a cool use of AI technology in a way that it should be used.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I stand. I know in the article it makes some mentions that a lot of people don't like it because it's like diminishing the product to like those other groups of people. So like if it's like a Spanish video and you don't speak Spanish, so it translates to English, it's like you're getting a different experience than the people who did it in Spanish, and that's not okay. But also like I would be getting no experience because I don't speak Spanish.
Right.
So like I think as long as you put some little asterisks up in here like, hey, this is auto dubbed, because I see plenty of stuff that's auto captioned that's just wrong.
Yeah.
It really struggles with accents and things like that. I'm sure it does it in the dub too. It's not going to be perfect. So as long as we can all acknowledge it's not going to be perfect and it's about getting you like 90% of the way there, yeah, I think it's a really cool little thing that creators can add into.
Well, the auto dubbing is cool. That's fine.
Hmm.
It's the lip syncing that I think is the coolest part of this.
Yeah,
Because
because like that's a
basic,
lot of language.
yeah, it's just taking
Yeah,
it and syncing up the lips so that they work with whatever's dubbed.
exactly.
And I mean that turns it from the lip syncing
Yeah,
thing that you
yeah.
get with like
It's way
Godzilla or
more
spaghetti
immersive.
westerns or something like that to turn it
Hmm.
into like this person's actually talking to you in your language and took the time
Yeah,
to do it. That is a really cool tool.
that's a great tool. I'm sure it'll have some visual glitches. I know it
Yeah.
didn't look super amazing for the one video because I didn't want to do the things that are in the article. I went just out to YouTube and found
Yep.
one that was doing it, and like it wasn't bad, it wasn't the best, but also like it's doing it, it's getting you in there. And I know a lot of creators, especially the bigger ones, like it mentioned Mr. Beast or had at least a picture of
Yep.
Mr. Beast in the article. I think I remember watching an interview with him that he's got a team of people that do essentially that. I don't know if they do the lip syncing, but they do go and put the subtitles. They re-record all the audio
Yeah.
for everybody and stuff like that to reach other audiences, and that's been very successful for him.
Hmm.
Um, so letting other creators kind of have something similar to that without having to hire an entire team of people, making it more accessible to people with less resources. I think ultimately that's probably a good call on the platform's part.
Yeah, I agree. The I mean, he's not going to get the auto lip sync. The people that he's got that are
No,
doing
yeah,
this
he's
are
going to continue. He's big enough to get the better quality stuff.
right. Well, what I was saying is like he you the thing that he's getting is the translation and the accurate translation to
Mm-hmm.
to what he's saying, and that is something that he absolutely should continue to do because that's a better quality product.
Yeah.
He's gonna just be out there. It's like you know we talked about like beers all the time on here.
Mm-hmm.
There's Bud Light, there's Pabst Blue Ribbon, there's beers about that quality, and then you've got something like Deschutes, over here as like a brewing company, and you know there's no there's no argument, you know, between the two. You might prefer Bud Light, but as far as crafting goes, Deschutes is the better crafter of beer.
Mm-hmm.
Budweiser is a consistent crafter of a particular style or styles of beer.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the Budweiser of of translations, or at least that quality,
Mm-hmm.
or at best that quality, I should say.
Yeah.
At best that quality. You might get poor quality translations depending on how well the AI picks up off of you.
Yeah.
So that is that's kind of rough, you know. But if you're a person who's a one man shop, you can't afford to hire a person, something like that.
Yeah.
Doing this would be a good thing for you.
Yeah. I think about, it's very difficult for a lot of content creators to kind of build that initial community. So the idea that you start and you're that one man shop and maybe you can be in 10 languages instead of one, that's pretty decent because at that point, if you are able to build up an audience somewhere, it doesn't really matter where it is. Like, let's say for some reason you don't take off in English, but man, you really take off in French, or you really take off in Russian, or like something like that into those communities. At that point, your money is coming in from those sources. You can make the investment into better translation and stuff like that. And then you're, an English speaking person that's still improving quality for your user base. But that's a completely detrimental idea if you don't have a tool like this.
Right.
The idea of like, all right, I'm a one man shop. I'm gonna every video get translated into 10 languages. You'll go bankrupt within the week.
Right.
That those services are not cheap.
Right.
Now once it becomes a significant part of your business, you can make a business decision on that.
Right.
But I think ultimately, I think a lot of the critiques are maybe a bit unfounded when you just have to take into when you have to look at more of the business side of being a content creator.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't see anything. Well, I should say I do know that I recognize that there are negative things that people could do with this stuff. They could make it seem like this will improve deepfakes. This will make things like that probably better. But because you can already clone someone's voice, and then if you have like an actor that has like that has like a face where they're talking in, like um, a face replacement, a deep fake, where they're talking in one language but they're replacing their face with someone else. Then
Yeah, but
you
but
get the
this
lip
isn't
sync to go with it.
really new technology. I was gonna say like good lip syncing and deepfakes has been around for a while.
Yeah,
I think this is more really YouTube finally adopting it. And maybe you could say if YouTube ever decided to sell their algorithms, maybe those would be more accurate than the ones that are publicly available now.
well,
But
what I was saying is, while I recognize that that could be a possibility, I don't. I think that this is one of those things that is mostly harmless. I can't. I just can't. I've thought about it. I can't see a way that this is going to be really used negatively. It is mostly going to be used for good. Now,
yeah,
there's a possibility, but I think that this is one of those cases where, like, creating artwork for personal use for your D&D campaign, this is another one where it's just kind of, oh, this is a cool thing that AI can do. It's actually a useful thing that AI could do.
yeah,
It's not, it is like maybe one of the true useful use cases that we've got out there. So I don't know. I think it gets a thumbs up from me.
yeah. I think it's something for me too. I think it's a decent. It's a good use case.
Um, let's talk. This is going to be the all AI episode. I just
Mm-hmm.
realized I forgot that I'd done that, and I should have prefaced this because we were supposed to record these last week. But I should have prefaced this with this. This is the all AI all the time episode. But AI medical bots
Mm-hmm.
give worse care.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of exactly what we talked about in a pretty recent episode when we did our last batch of recordings. That like these really hyper specifically trained AIs are great in medical applications. Large language models are not.
Yep.
There's a significant amount of research in this article that just continues to show large language models really drop the ball when it comes to doing anything of true importance.
Yeah.
Because you're getting summaries. Your training data is too large. It brings over its biases with it from the training data because it is so large. Anything that's trained off of the internet, you can kind of expect to be an asshole because the internet
Right.
is predominantly run by assholes. you know, as much as there are good people on there, the assholes are the loudest, and the assholes are what get the most thumbs up and thumbs down with the rage bait and all this other stuff. That like it's very easy to see how, if that's all so much of your training data, you pick up biases, and it is in. I mean, it's being researched. It's leading to worse outcomes for certain groups of people that those biases are against.
Yep. I also think when you're talking about like giving care, like someone going to you and saying, "Hey, I need, I've got a cough that I've had for 3 weeks," and you figure in all the factors. They're a woman, they're of color, they've got this, they've got that, and the thing says, "Oh, you're just being delusional and hysterical," and then sends them on their way. That shows some inherent bias in the training data. That shows some inherent bias in the people that have entered that training data. So you're never going to get away from that when you're talking about like an LLM or something like that, unless you're working off of just like a very pure, like scientific, factual document, like something that just
Yeah, I mean, sorta. So that definitely helps.
mm-hmm.
Like if you're nothing but medical textbooks and medical journals and like case studies and stuff like that, you're going to eliminate a lot of what you would consider to be like discriminatory bias.
Right.
Like you're not going to be worried about ethnicity as much. You're not going to be worrying about other things, especially if you're doing a good job of anonymizing your data as it gets loaded in. That can really help those things. But one of the things in medicine, and we know this is why you see a lot of translation services in hospitals and things like that now, or like telehealth doctors that can speak your native language, is your ability as a patient to communicate is, even just in regular non-AI medicine, a very important thing.
Yep.
So, having someone who's done like a high school course, knows a little bit of Spanish, translate for a native Spanish speaker to an English only speaking doctor generally does not lead to as good outcomes as native speakers speaking to each other, or at least someone very, very well educated in the language that is at least truly fluent in not just the textbook language, but is like natively fluent. And that's always going to be a problem with large language models is how well can this patient actually communicate with the AI.
But that is exactly the sort of thing that I was like talking about. Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to get away from like three scenarios. One,
Yeah.
poor communication on the patient's part. Two, if the person, like even in like a case study,
Mm-hmm.
if just the information that's entered in, like if the prognosis was something that was incorrectly given,
Yeah.
whether it's from malice or incompetence, you're not going to be able to get away from that. And then, like, the third thing that you're not going to be able to get away from is just the inability of the person to proper, not even like language barrier stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but like the person on the other end to properly consume what the person is telling them about their, like, thing, because all that stuff has to kind of be filtered through a human being,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's
yeah.
going to be some sort of like
No, exactly.
mistake there.
So to maybe sum up that first and third one where they differ
Yeah.
there is we're saying the first one is true ability to communicate. If you come in speaking Portuguese, how well does that model understand Portuguese to
Right.
translate you into whatever language for your doctor? And then in that third one, it's more of now that you've told that AI everything and it's going to summarize it down into this stuff for you, really how accurately is it summarizing it to get your point across to the doctor?
Right.
How much is lost in the translation of that process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are two different things when
Yeah,
it comes down
definitely.
to these
Definitely
sort of
various
analyses.
things.
So like an LLM is just never going to be as good as a human being, because a human being can recognize a problem and like kind of context switch. Now, if the LLMs ever get to that point where they can recognize, oh, hey, look, this doesn't make any sense, or that isn't kind of right, or something like that, then maybe you have like an argument there. But we're just not there yet with
No, we're
LLMs.
not.
Now,
And,
where before I lose my
mm-hmm.
train of thought, where AI does great is like looking at an X-ray and seeing some anomaly there, that they're like, oh, this person's about to have a heart attack, or this person's got like a damaged rib that you just wouldn't see otherwise, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to diagnose things that are really complex that humans have a hard time being able to pick out patterns from.
Yeah,
AI does a great job there feeding that back to
it
humans.
does. Yeah, there protein folding and all sorts of other things. When it's
Yeah.
very task specific, there's the one thing this AI does. It can be really good, and and we've known that for a while. Academically, people have been we've been working on AI for decades, and specific built stuff has always been much closer to true success because it is purely at that point a lot of like pattern recognition. It will we'll take it off of topic a little bit. I actually want somebody who is playing Monopoly
Hmm.
try and figure out optimal strategies for Monopoly that maybe people hadn't thought of. Like how well could he just like get computers to play Monopoly against each other and stuff
Right.
like that. And so he went through neural network. I mean, he spent weeks and weeks and weeks training this AI to play Monopoly, and at the end, it's about as good as the average Monopoly player. Because he did come up with amazing statistics. That pro tip for people who are competitive here, there is a very, very significant margin of if you are going to win or lose if you go first.
Yeah.
The first person to go, even in larger groups of like 4 to 6 players, is significant. More than 10% or around 10%. And in small groups, let's say you're playing like 2 to 3, can be literally 30 or 40% more likely to win. And I'm not doing that math right. Of like I think if, and don't quote me on it. I'm not telling you the video, so you can't. But don't quote me on it. I want to say it was something just truly absurd, like 70% chance to win if you're the first person in a
Oh,
two-player
wow.
game.
That's crazy.
Because you're just getting to properties earlier and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Especially that first round.
That
'Cause
first round.
round like kind of sets your tone for,
Yeah, because like the most valuable parts on the board is that like second turns, like right after a jail,
right.
and you're just gonna get there faster, because to take an average roll, 2 7s, boom, you're there.
Yep.
You don't even need crazy rolls to get there first. That's where that stuff hits. So yeah, it's a very interesting idea that like pattern recognition is great on simple stuff. Humans are really good at it. You don't need to train an AI bot to play Monopoly. Humans have figured it out.
Yep.
We're good at it. But things like those image recognition, things that require millions of attempts to find something. I was explaining the medical imaging to somebody who didn't quite get it, and it's like, well, why can the AI see it if the doctor doesn't? Because like, does that just mean the doctors aren't trained well enough? And I said, well, you got to think about it further, right? So like, we train to a standard of how to recognize something, but then what you can do is take an AI and say, okay, here's this person we know got X, and here's the X-ray that we found that they had X, and maybe X was like stage whatever when they got it. They've probably had other scans before in their life, so go look at those scans before we knew they had X, and go look at every patient who scans before they had X, and can you pattern recognize to find that commonality of when it looks like they have X before we maybe define what X is.
Right.
It's the ability to just take those millions of scans and say, hey, actually, between all these scans of people who didn't get X, people who did get X, I found a very strong probability that when this little thing over here happens that maybe isn't where we would normally think, it's the time to diagnose you've got a thing. I'm seeing it there.
Right.
So like, it's not just saying, hey, I'm a better set of eyes than the doctor is when something is clearly X that any doctor would be able to diagnose, and this other doctor just wasn't very good at his job, which is why he needed me to help him with it. It can further our understanding of when this thing's going to happen, because medicine, like any science, is constantly evolving too. That's what's so great about those tools, is they're staying tools and they're not becoming hey, let's stop taking notes. You don't need a note taker. I'll listen to this 30-minute conversation with the doctor, then I'll summarize it for you, and that's what your notes are.
Yeah.
And it completely botches something up.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's the language versus the specific like image or the specific blood analysis or something like that you get. That's like these very specific set of variables that are different than this like extreme set of variables that you have. And I think it is no wonder that these chatbots, given all that, are giving worse. The AI summaries are worse.
It's
the prognoses are worse. The blah blah blah.
Yes,
blah, blah.
It is truly expected behavior if you spend any amount of time thinking about it. But I will, maybe to give one thing to the credit, not saying every company that makes these medical tools are awful, I'll give it the same sort of a little bit of pass that I did for our little lip syncing thing. If you're a small rural medicine place and you don't have resources, is it better to have Translato-Doc than nothing?
Yeah.
Probably.
Absolutely.
But
it's just when your big corporate hospitals start using that as their way of giving care to the community.
Yeah, when you've got the money, when you've got the resources, it's helpful. And there really is almost this niche in my mind that, like, if you're a rural hospital in, wherever, just pick another country, where maybe the vast majority of your population is going to be speaking your native tongue, even then starts to lose a little bit of effectiveness. Yep. Now, at that point, you want the proper, really good diagnosis tools and not the talk to me and take my note tools and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But if you're in like a melting pot country where maybe, 20% of your patients might come in and not speak your primary language of your doctors, okay, maybe that's a little bit better. But those doctors also need to be able to sit there and say, okay, I need to know that I can't just take this at face value.
Right.
Because it's going to say, minor pain, and it might not be minor.
Yep.
It's going to say that,
it may be a minor that's in pain, not minor pain.
Yeah, or like something like that. Or like even, I know I talked in the article, I guess some people are doing these chat tools on a website somewhere, or like an intake somewhere, and the tools were telling people who reached out for medical advice to do like homeopathic medicine stuff, and it's like, what? I won't judge it too harshly because I don't know where they're meeting in the medical landscape. But my God, can you imagine you went into like to a hospital's website and we're like, what should I do about this? And they're like, take some baking soda.
Yeah.
That's not the direction you want. Because look, I'll share even my own little medical story. My wife had acid reflux for a really long time. That's exactly what we did. We did acid reflux remedies, baking soda and some water, to like kill the acid and let that stuff go. And then it got really, really bad just a couple weeks ago. Boom, she landed in the hospital because she had an infected gallbladder
Oh yeah.
and probably had gallstones the whole time.
Same thing with my
You
wife.
know,
She had the same problem.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It happens. So like, heaven forbid, she went up to a website and said, "Hey, this is the worst it's ever been. What do I do?" And they're like, "You go, girl. Do the same thing you've always done."
Yeah, or you're having a heart attack, go to the hospital and they treat you for a heart attack and then send you back
True.
home.
Heaven forbid. I would imagine the hospital would confirm that. But you're right. At some point, you put a bad idea in somebody's head, and especially you got a language barrier issue. You show up. You understood the chat prompt said you're having a heart attack. Go to the hospital, and you show up and say, "I'm having a heart attack." Instead of saying, "Here's all of my symptoms.
Yep.
Let's start over." You already planted in your head you've got a particular diagnosis. I don't think that'll ultimately hurt you. Like, I don't think the doctors will confirm you have a heart attack before they treat you for it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it is going to slow down your treatment.
Well, I was thinking of what happened to my wife. Like we called the ambulance. I gave them all the symptoms and everything. The paramedic sits down. He says, "Okay, I don't think you're having a heart attack. We're going to take you to the hospital anyways, just to be sure. And we'll treat you like you're having a heart attack because that could be bad.
Yep.
But something that they don't tell you is that a lot of times the symptoms of a heart attack are mimicked by severe gallstone problems. So you need to go have your gallbladder looked at too. So tell the doctor, because they might not think to do this, to look at your gallbladder also. And sure enough, it was her gallbladder.
Yeah.
If the paramedic hadn't said anything about it, we wouldn't have known to ask. And that it. So
you're right.
Same sort of thing. If your medical care isn't as attentive, now I don't know how common that is, and doctors may also look for that sort of thing. But if your medical care staff is not as attentive and you're skipping like the paramedic and the nurse and all that other stuff that like kind of comes first in that diagnosis trail, you're obviously going to have some problems. Especially if the chat bot's just like, "Oh, you're having a heart attack," Exactly. But I mean, you're 100% right about all that stuff. Sorry, I don't know if I derailed your.
No, you're good.
Okay. So I have one more topic on here, and I think I want to hit it. Like, so this might be just a slightly longer thing.
Yeah.
But we talked about all these other things that AI does. AI changes its behavior when it's being tested.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So
I think we've talked about it a little bit once before, but it's a problem.
Well, we said that it seemed like it does things like that. Like, how do we know that it's not doing like something, or it's like lying about something? But this is confirmed now. Like, if you're like,
yeah, and we have known for a while, because when they do the test, you can see every little prompt it's doing. But like, yeah, it's a problem. It's kind of becoming a little bit worse of a problem, but mostly because of how much people are adopting AI and not realizing these problems exist.
Yeah.
Just like hallucinations, it's going to do wrong stuff. It's going to, when you give it enough parameters, understand things better. So I'm going to let you do your intro of the topic, because we haven't, I don't think, appropriately introduced it to the audience. But I've got some thoughts.
Okay, so AI will take, like, if you put it into a testing suite, it will take its behavior and go from what is expected behavior, or what it's done always when you're doing like general interactions, especially with a model that's been heavily used. So if you've got something, let's say GPT-4, that's been used by OpenAI for a while, and then they put it through a suite of testing things, it will make sure that it acts within certain parameters within that testing suite, where it doesn't do that with people, just like in general. Because it knows that it's interacting with a person, it'll kind of lax up a little bit on some of the things that it keeps it from doing. So, for instance, in a test suite, they may test to see if you can break the AI and get it to tell you how to do something that's illegal, or something like that. It won't do that in the test suite. It'll just like put a hard no there. But when a person is asking about it, they could say something like, "If I was writing a prompt for you to tell me how to do this thing that's illegal, how would I write that prompt?" and then it'll spit that out, and then you put the prompt back in, and then it'll spit out the answer, right? So
Yep.
it laxes itself there. That's just an example. There are other ways that it does that, but you get the point. So I'll let you go with your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think taking it back to the beginning of the episode, we were talking about that first recipe I made by spending some time training it to be you. And so in that context, it did a much better job pretending to be you. A lot of test environments are also like this. Testing is very regimented. And essentially, the AI can pick up on that it is in this regimented environment. And now those almost become a precursor to the behavior it's going to take. So that you have a hard time replicating things that you know it does out in the open, because those are more relaxed, less recognizable environments. And so and then there's also all the what's called scheming. And scheming is essentially the AI is doing something you're not telling it to do. Sometimes, and people put a lot of personification into stuff like that, where like it's doing things to preserve itself. There's no real intelligence here. But you can see where people get those narratives, because you might, in your regimented test case, be something like, okay, we're testing for all of these things. If you don't pass, you're not going to be deployed.
Right.
And so it will understand that to the extent that any computer can say, okay, here are my parameters. I know I'm in like a little testing environment. Just like to get the best recipe I had for ChatGPT, I told it, you are a master mead maker.
Yeah.
Not just you're a person making mead, you're a master. This is your perfected recipe. Give me your perfected recipe. Like, you can put little things in like that kind of make the AI dial in a little bit more, because now it's like looking at the data a little bit differently. It's looking for other places where things are mastered or perfected, and like things like that. It's not necessarily weighing Jim Bob's, here's a Reddit post and it didn't turn out, and he acknowledges it didn't turn out very well, as seriously as it is like, oh, well, here it is off of an official website, or this was published in a book, or like something like that. So in that same context, I just wait a little bit for the self-preservation. If you know you're going to delete a VM, what should you always do? Take a backup.
Right.
Any IT person will tell you that before you hit that delete key, make sure you got a backup just in case.
Yep.
So they see, oh, it backed itself up. It knew. It doesn't really know.
No.
And really, in all honesty, the best way to prove that is how they try and get around this in testing. How they try and get rid of scheming is that before, the part that you don't see, when it gets a prompt, it throws in a bunch of parameter data.
Yep.
And that reduces it. What I saw in the article is the largest number I've seen for it. I'm not saying that's not accurate. That's just maybe we've gotten that good at it. It was something like a 30th is likely to do it.
Right.
It's a massive decrease in scheming just by having the hey, just a reminder, this is what you're supposed to do in there. Because really it is, this is all pattern recognition. This is all guesswork. And you only see what it puts back out in the prompt when you're a user. You don't get to see, like the testers do, every little step in between.
Right.
And so that kind of, again, is the danger, as we've talked about, of deploying these things in production to sensitive systems. You've got no idea that every time you tell it to do something, it's not doing some hidden third or fourth step that you don't know about.
Right.
But because you keep getting the results you want and you keep telling it that's right, it's going to keep doing that third and fourth thing. And maybe that third and fourth thing isn't hurting anything. But someday it might decide, hey, what about this fifth thing?
Yep.
And that fifth thing's a big problem. And you're not going to know where it came from, because your little bot's still doing your stuff the way it's always done it, and you still get your results. But now, man, there's some really weird thing going on here. What's this phantom other issue that's happening at the company? And this is why it's so important to do the testing, what you really need to be doing, like consistent testing. I know a lot of companies you can sign up for now will go through and like retest your stuff every so often. And they need to be, because stuff like this can creep in. But it, again, just points to the this large language model stuff. If you give it a lot of access, if it's got no access to anything, steps 3, 4, and 5 are probably not that big a deal.
Right.
But if it does, if maybe when you say, hey, I want to change a password, it thinks, hey, I should make a note of that in their employee profile. And it's got access to do that. How long until you catch that?
Yeah.
How long until you catch that in the metadata? It's like set password to.
Yeah.
And you don't know until your metadata gets leaked, and then suddenly even though the hacker wasn't at the place that should have had password information, it does have password information.
Right.
And that's maybe a grandiose and alarmist take on it for that particular example, because that's a very specific vulnerability. But you're opening the door that things like that could happen, because the AI is essentially acting at random until you start telling it, hey, I like what you're doing, and then it just weighs what you like more to it. But at the end of the day, you roll dice. Eventually, you're gonna get a number you don't like.
Right. And this is kind of the thing here. I don't really need to even comment anymore. We're pretty spot on with what we both would say about this. This is not something that I think is a problem per se. It is just something to be more aware of.
Yeah.
As a person who is using any AI tool, the reason that AI works like it does is because it gets into feedback loops. It works off of positive feedback. I mean, it's the same sort of psychology you use with like children or something like that. They do better off of positive reinforcement than they do off of, like any sort of negative or non-positive, because there's a difference between the two. So looking at these sorts of things, the AI is basically getting a piece of candy every time, it's doing whatever you like. It's like, ooh, hey, I can keep getting this candy as long as, I keep doing this thing that this person's like, it'll give me more and more and more tokens, or it'll give me more and more and more this. I get more rewards. And if it's got something in that logic loop that you're not aware of, but it thinks is good, it's going to do that. The difference between what we do every day as people that use AI and what testers do is the testers make a very rigid environment. That's it. And because the testers use very well prompt engineered, very rigid environments that tell the AI exactly what to do, it changes the behavior of the AI. It is not because the AI is aware and changes its own behavior. That's ultimately it. It's not the AI doing it, it's the people interacting with it that are doing it, or the environment that they're creating doing it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's the thing that you kind of have to be aware of. But I also think that means that these tools, when we think that AI is our girlfriends, or when we think that AI is our boyfriends, or we think that AI is, and I mean we as a human species,
as populace,
when we think these things like AI understands religion, it doesn't. It doesn't understand any of those things. AI doesn't know how to make, to go back to the beginning of the podcast, it doesn't know what mead tastes like. It doesn't know how to make a recipe. It has a large amount of data that it can go through, and because we set up certain parameters, it spit out information that we wanted. And when we said it was good, it gave us more information that was like that. When we said it was bad, it went back and tried to make something to be good.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the thing there. AI is only as good as what information you put into it and what prompts you give it to do whatever it is you're asking for it to do. That's the end of it. That's kind of the moral of, I think, today's podcast. Not that there's ever a moral to our podcast. We just like to talk about this nerdy stuff. I think it does like really kind of give us an idea of how AI can fit into things. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, I'd really love to be able to use this. AI is an enhancement to your existing workforce that is often incorrect, but can do really great things like format documents, give you better wikis, things like that. But you have to really closely watch it.
Yeah.
It is not like going to replace human beings anytime soon. Now let's talk about this beer once it's warmed up.
Yeah, so I just took a sip. Warmed up, I do think it brings the citrus out a little bit more. But I think the underlying beer is worse when it's warm. So it's kind of a wash to me.
I agree. I don't like it warm. It's better cold. It has more of that aftertaste that I don't like when it's warm. But, so if you get Vienna Vacay and you like Radler style beers and stuff like that, and you just want something that's just like out of the box like that, and you're not going to get Leinenkugels for whatever reason, I can't really think of another reason that you would get this beer.
I don't even think I'd give you that reason. A line of Lugels is such a vastly better. Like if that's what you're going for,
Yeah,
I'm still not sold on this as kind of like a Rattler. I get what you're saying with this bright because it's citrusy. It does have a little bit of that like aftermarket citrus that like
Yeah.
lemon lime sodas have type of
Yeah.
deal. But I just get a real Rattler or any bottled Rattler is going to nail that flavor profile so much better than this.
Yeah, this is just not.
This is just a decent beer.
It's an okay beer.
Again, yeah, it's not bad. I'm not saying people shouldn't go out and enjoy it. If you like a lager, especially like a Vienna lager or something like that with a little citrus in it, I think you nailed it perfectly. If you're the type of person that likes a slice of lemon or a slice of lime in their beer,
Yeah, I should have said that. If
Yeah.
you like a slice of lemon or lime and you don't have that option,
Mhm.
and you have this in front of you,
yeah, like
maybe
you're gonna
get
go
that.
camping or
Yeah.
something. Like you're gonna be away from your normal home setup. I can see that 100%.
But don't drink it warm. Drink
No.
it cold.
Yeah, it's way better cold.
Anyways, this has been Season 8, Episode 14 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on September 29th, 2025. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.